Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Desert Island Movies. Now, today I am joined by former WWE NXT superstar Killian Dane, who is now more commonly known as Big Damo. Hello, Big Damo. How you doing?
Hello.
The Beast of Belfast. Sorry, I forgot your intro there. The Beast of Belfast. Although the Beast of Belfast is currently residing in America.
Orlando, Florida. Don't know if I
No,
could call
Florida,
myself the
in the
Beast of
heat.
Orlando, you
Yeah,
know.
so the Beast of Orlando. Yeah, so yeah, you're doing all that. So how have you been? Busy man?
Very good. Yeah, it's been a really hectic few weeks actually. I was over in the UK there for about 3 weeks. So I've had a bit of downtime nursing a couple of knocks. So I've been quite lucky the way it's all worked out. But my training partner, my Chihuahua here, who's absolutely knackered beside me, has been a lot of fun during the recovery. So
The Beast of Belfast has a Chihuahua.
Chihuahua.
Now there's
Chihuahua Terrier mix, so she's got a bit double the energy, but she sleeps for about 4 hours during the day after her walk, so it works out great for me. So
so you can get on with your day-to-day stuff. Right, brilliant. So we have you here on the desert island. As you may notice, it looks very lovely. It's certainly not that warm over here where I
I
am
was going
right
to say you're wearing a hoodie during your
now. Yeah,
desert
I
island.
know that kind of ruins the gimmick, doesn't
It
it?
must be the breeze. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
it's
It's the
it's a bit chilly. Yeah,
breeze.
there's a bit
Yeah.
of side
Yeah.
wind coming in. It makes it a little bit cold. Yeah, it's absolutely nothing to do with my lighting that's gone wrong, and it's making me look yellow. So I thought I'd better, darken it up a bit. Nothing to do with that at all.
Jaundice, you know.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, so we're here on the island. So as those of you who watch this show regularly will know, Damo is going to have three movie choices. Now, there are a few rules with these movie choices. Well, there's two rules with these movie choices, which those of you who watch will know, but we'll refresh you anyway. So the first rule is you are not allowed to pick sequels. So you cannot go, I'm having Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3 as my choices. You're not allowed to.
Bastard.
That's true. You can have one of them. You can't have all three. And the other rule is you cannot pick an entire franchise as one pick. So you can't pick all the Harry Potter movies. That is
Ah,
also not on. So other than that, you pretty much got free reign to pick three films, which we will go through very shortly, and one movie soundtrack. So without further ado, I suppose we better get straight into it. What is, Damo, your first movie that you would want on the island with you?
so I had a long, hard thought about this, and I told you off air that I'd chosen like 12 movies. Not
Well, I
really
wasn't going to
sure.
say anything, but
Trying to narrow it down, and that includes actually, as you said about Back to the Future. I was like, well, is it all three? But so I had a good thought about what I would want to watch for the rest of my life if I'm stuck on a desert island. And first one on that list would be Mike Bassett, England manager.
Gentlemen, the New England manager, Mike Bassett.
We invented football and we gave it to the world. Well, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to bring it back.
What is it that makes a successful manager?
Well, there's three things. A, you've got to pick the best players. B, you've got to motivate them. And C, you've got to use the right tactics. And D, which is probably most important of all, you've got to get some luck. Put it away, son!
Oh, wow.
And it is one of those movies that I've watched time and time again. Ricky Tomlinson playing the phenomenal Mike Bassett, who gets the England job by complete luck, because nobody else wants it really. And it goes through pretty much the period where Graham Taylor in real life and a variety of other managers actually had, in the real, part of the world, sorry, the real side of football. And they kind of parody that so bloody well. Like pretty much the whole 80s, 90s, and 2000s is all kind of covered in this movie, and I absolutely adore it. And I'm not an England fan by any stretch of the imagination.
The accent
But
may
I'm a
give
big
that
fan
away.
of English football, and I just absolutely adore the whole concept behind the movie, the humor around so much of it. There's a brilliant moment where he gets the job and it's his first day, and he says, he meets the head of the FA, and they're like, if you have any suggestions, just write it down in a letter and shove it under the door. And he checks under the carpet. There's just thousands of letters that have been put under the door that he never sees. And I just love that. It's the tongue-in-cheek concept of football management, but also the nonsense that goes behind football, and even like the media furor anytime England play at a tournament. So you're English, you get it. It can be so over the top when they're, sometimes they just need a bit of support. But it's also so relevant to today because a lot of heat behind the current England manager Gareth Southgate because he's got a very talented team but can't get a great tune out of them. So I feel like this cycles every 4 years that the movie becomes relevant yet again every time we come close to a tournament.
Maybe they should just employ Ricky Tomlinson as Mike Bassett and see what happens.
I mean, at this point, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm sure he'd probably do a better job. 4-4-2.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes that film so great is Ricky Tomlinson in the central role. I don't think anybody else could have quite pulled it off like he did because
he's
he
wonderful.
Just got that English, just got that English manager, not like I said, 90s manager vibe. He's really got that going on. So it just, it's a cracking movie. Very, very funny. Very quotable and memed for years everywhere, especially when, like you say, there's a disaster with the England football team, which seems all too regular, which is why you might be nice coming on a desert island and get away from all that nonsense. So is there any particular scene there, apart from the letters thing, is there any particular scene that really stands out?
So obviously where they're in the hotel bar, and like they might end up getting a few drinks, and Pele's walking through. He's being interviewed. He's been followed by a documentary crew, and he sees the English boys, and Tomlinson's up in the bar naked, like dancing, and Pele's like, "Oh Christ, it's the English!" and he runs off.
Futebol mundial é uma família de nações. Serve para colocar os povos juntos, para fazer amizade. Eu acredito nisso.
You were the greatest striker in the history of football, and you still missed the sitting there in the World Cup in 1970. You were only 3 foot out. He ended it, and Banksy tipped it over the bar. Take a tip from me. It's all about upper body strength.
But there's a brilliant scene when they're at the airport and they meet both Ireland and Scotland. And they all end up in in a brawl. It's utterly brilliant. Like, so there's just so much like at that period, a lot of the Irish players, there was half the team would have been potentially English or English backgrounds. So as the Irish lads come in, the English boys are like, "Oh, here comes the England C team," and blah blah blah. So there's a lot of nods to previous parts of previous parts of actual history in football. So I loved it. There's just so many scenes, as you say, quotable and everything else. The Benson and Hedges bit where he's writing the England team on the back of cigarette packets, but it's a Benson and Hedges. So the secretary has called up a guy from Division 3 and a guy from Division 4 because their name's Benson and Hedges. It's amazing. It's so funny. Like, it is so good.
It is proper funny. At this point, we should probably point out that you're also a Manchester United fan. For those of you probably just lost half my audience.
Long suffering.
So football is not something that you just dip in and out. It's something you are very much into.
Obsessed, I think, is probably the word. Like as I've got older, I remember there was a period when United were dominating. Like I actually kind of had an apathy towards football, and I kind of fell out of love with it because it was like when your team was continually winning and whatever else. So it's funny, like that mid-2000s. So I think I'm being punished for that now because we're utterly terrible for the last decade. So I'm getting punished for my apathy in my early 20s.
Yeah. Well, it could be worse. You could be an Everton supporter right now, but it's yeah.
Well, I'll just say this: if Everton can get Doc 10 points, how many points are Man City going to get?
How did I know you were going to say that? I don't know. I just had this weird feeling that you might actually say that.
115 charges. Everton had 1 charge.
Yeah. Yeah, but Everton don't have half the money Man City do. But we're getting a little bit political now. We're not talking about that. We're here to talk about movies. So when was the first? Where did you first see Mike Bassett? Was it on video, on VHS, or was it at the cinema? Or
honestly, it would have been like a video. I was living in Scotland in early 2000s when I was doing wrestling training and I was at university. So I lived with the 3 lads who were all 2 Scottish and 1 Northern Irish guy, all mad into football. And like one random night, somebody gets the disc for it, and we're sitting watching it. I think we watched it 4 times that week. It was just so funny, and it was like I think it was coming up to Euro 2004 maybe. So it was just the perfect timing of the right movie to watch at the right time. And we all went in the next day to put bets on who was going to win Euros. I think I went for Holland and. Klaas-Jan Huntelaar as the top scorer, and I was so wrong. but I think nobody had Greece for the win. So
well, no one did. That was the thing. No one saw Greece coming. I mean, yeah, it's now there's a crazy story. It's a really good documentary about that that's worth watching. But
that's
yeah,
incredible because Greece were the weapon boys for a long time in football.
Yeah.
The right coach, defensive style. The fella was playing for Celtic. Was it Georgios Samaras? So that he was their most well-known player, and he was playing in the Scottish League or something. So it was crazy.
Yeah. But there, you actually segued quite nicely into what we're going to talk about next, which is your wrestling career. So,
oh no,
so you started out in Scotland. You're saying when you first started training.
So I originally went. I'll go all the way back actually. So, I got really obsessed with wrestling in my late. Let me see. Early teens is when the Attitude Era really kicked off, and then I started really getting into it online. So, like all these online communities, forums, everything like that, like really started taking off in the late '90s. And I started talking to a bunch of lads who were role playing, where you would effectively do promos and things like that. You would take a character and do promos as part of a community. So, like, say I was Booker T and somebody else was The Rock, and you'd be doing promos against each other, and somebody would judge who wins, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And eventually, you become friends with a lot of them. I find out some of them are actually a part of an actual company in Scotland. So I kept that in my head. At this point, I was maybe 15. So over the next couple of years, I started deciding how I was going to structure my life. And I decided to move then over to Edinburgh. So it meant I had access, I could travel through to Glasgow and go to the school outside Paisley. And that was at the start. But right now, at that point, sorry, I could have went to Manchester or Kent were my other two options. But because I built up the kind of relationship with the lads in Scotland, I was like, okay, this is where I'll give it a try. And that was it. Yeah. So my first few months in Scotland, I did the typical student thing, and then when I was ready to settle down a bit, I got a job and then started going through and started my training. So at first it was just very hobbyist style. I was going once a week, and then I was going twice a week, 3 times a week, and eventually a hobby becomes a part-time job, becomes a full-time job, then became a career. Over a 10-year period, pretty much. I think from 2004 to about 2009. 5-year period. So by 2009, I was full time at wrestling. But the first 5 years, it was definitely more like a hobby than anything else.
Yeah.
But the early training was very difficult. We didn't really have a ring, so it was all done mostly on judo mats and concrete. And
cool.
eventually I started then traveling around, going to seminars all across the UK and looking for better coaching and better facilities and things like that. And then you're getting a lot more matches, a lot more experience, in England and whatever else. You start wrestling better people, and things start to click into place. But at first, I was utterly terrible, and I did not take to wrestling like a duck to water. I can say that. So anybody who's listening to this who is a young trainee, like if it's not happening right away, don't worry. It does eventually click. And I was an athlete. I was playing football from a university and stuff. So and rugby. So I was pretty athletic at that point, and I was struggling.
So, at what point did you realize? Yeah, this is when it went full time in 2009. When was that? When was the point that you went? Yeah, this is it.
So I made a decision. With the recession in 2008, 2009, I got made redundant with the Royal Bank of Scotland, who I was working with, and I decided to take the redundancy money and open a wrestling school. The one that I had been working with in Scotland was about to close down. So I took it upon myself. Okay, what I'll do is I'll kind of take that over and use that as a way to try and get the whole concept of facilities and everything better in this area. And we invested a lot into guest coaches. We invested a lot into the facility itself. I think by 2011 we moved into this fantastic unit over in kind of South Glasgow, and it ended up being very beneficial. A lot of the talents you see now on WWE television all came out of that school. So it's a lot of that's on them, by the way, not on me. So that's on their their drive, their determination. But we had a lot of success. But that's what we needed. We needed the facilities to be better. We needed the opportunity to be there, and we would run shows on a regular basis to try and get everybody as much experience as possible. And it was around that time, between 2009 to about 2012, when we focused really hard on that. And then pretty much after 2012, I then started focusing more on my own career. And I started kind of being a bit more aware of how I wanted to present myself with my image and my look, because at that point I had short hair and stubble, and I looked very much like everybody else.
Yeah.
And then I got some good advice from Robbie Brookside, who's now a coach over at NXT. And he said, well, what's your X factor? You're a good worker and everything else, but what is your X factor? If put yourself in the shoes of an American, like, why should they look at you? That took a long time to really like resonate in my brain until I figured out, how I wanted to look. At that point, I was powerlifting. I was a lot bigger. I was maybe getting to 18 stone at that point. Regularly chucking around Atlas stones with a bunch of my mates, and you're kind of like, okay, so how do I want to present myself? And I realized, like, I saw a photo of myself, and I didn't realize this is crazy. I had giant legs, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll not hide them, I'll show them. And then I went, I realized, saw another photo. I'm like, okay, I'm actually, my shoulders are starting to look big, the chest looking big. So I'll stop covering that up too. And so I started wearing trunks. I'm now getting closer to 20 stone. I let my beard grow for the first time. I let my hair start growing through. And I did a day, like, kind of re-debuted for ICW. And Billy Kirkwood, this is probably the end of 2013. He named me the Beast of Belfast, and that was it. That was a light bulb moment. That was it. That was everything I needed. That was the slap in the face, the jolt, everything you needed, all at the same time. And I was like, yes, I will be the Beast of Belfast. And then my career trajectory from that moment it was all up. Wow. Within 2 years of that, I was speaking to WWE. I was speaking to TNA. I was speaking to New Japan. Um, all my dreams were happening all at the same time, and it was because a very talented commentator for ICW, gave me a really cool name, and it was everything I needed at the time, because I was on that path, but having somebody else give me that final nudge was exactly all I needed. And a lot of credit to Billy. He hates taking credit for this, but for 10 years I've been putting him over. So but it was somebody else, with a very creative mind, who just had an idea for me, and that changed it for me. And I was able to go from there, and literally my ring gear, even from my boots, my image, everything. I literally was able to make something that nobody else was doing at the time.
Yeah.
And as you say, you said at the top of the show, Beast of Belfast, that was it. That was the drive, and that's what took me all the way to live out my dreams.
Yeah, amazing. So we'll come on to that in a minute. But first, we need to get your second movie choice.
Yeah, the second one's harder, right? Because as I said, I wrote down 12. Okay, but this one is one of my utterly favorite movies. I think I've watched this maybe 30 to 40 times.
Oh, wow.
If it comes on, I just have to keep watching it, and it's Groundhog Day.
Yes! Groundhog Day!
Life has a funny way of repeating itself.
What did you do today?
Oh, same old, same old.
With Bill Murray and it's Andy McDowell. I think it's one of the funniest. It's a black comedy, obviously, but funniest. But it's also science fiction and everything, right? It's good drama, it's emotional, but utterly brilliant. Bill Murray is such a charming and at the same time asshole of an actor. I think he can play the hero and the villain in the same sentence. I think he's utterly brilliant. His facial reactions to everything, where he can be so cool, and then the next minute he can be like off the wall. I think he's utterly brilliant. But yeah, I think it's one of the best movies that I've ever seen. Absolutely. And I think that for me, like, we can talk about like The Godfather, and we can talk about like all these incredible epics and stuff like that, but realistically, like, this is a movie that I can watch time and time and time again and find new things in it. I've read interviews about it. I've watched documentaries about it. I just think it's such a perfect movie. And to this day, if it comes on, I'll have to watch it again.
It's kind of ironic, really, isn't it? That you,
yeah, exactly. That's the irony. You are reliving the same movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Over
and
again.
also, if you're on a desert island, it's going to be a bit Groundhog Day. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's going to prepare me, for the day in day out slog of the island life. So
yeah, the only thing is you probably can't top yourself on the island and come back the following day. I think that might be a problem. But
honestly, I think like the genius, of he goes through the existential life crisis, then he goes through the period where he's like, right, I'll just learn new language. I'll learn how to play the piano. I'll learn ice sculpting. I'll introduce myself to every person in the area. I'll save lives. He saves a little boy's life every day, and he never thanks him once. He saves the mayor from choking to death. Blah blah blah. He tries to save the old man, and I think that's his relationship with the old man. He just can't save him. Is the most heartbreaking because he finally develops empathy, whereas he was, a low level celebrity. So he was more arrogant than empathetic. And like the way his entire life changes after he realizes after thousands of attempts, he can't save the old man's life is just utterly brilliant. So yeah, I adore the movie, and like it's just his complete journey. And then his realization that he's actually in love with the female lead, Andy. What's her name? Sorry,
Andy McDowell.
Andy McDowell. Stuck in my head there. But he realizes all along he's in love with Andy McDowell. It's just brilliant because it never felt, it becomes such a natural thing because he starts to learn more and more about her, and he goes through this whole thing where he's trying to like he's trying to sleep with her, and he just can't do it. And then he realizes, he's actually in love with her and everything. It was utterly brilliant. And I think Bill Murray just plays the role so stunningly, because for every moment where you hate him, there's 20 more moments where you love him, and I think that's why it's just the perfect movie.
Yeah, I mean, Groundhog Day it's a modern classic, isn't it? I mean, like the scene where every morning he gets the insurance guy coming up to him. At one point, he just gets so frustrated and he just right crosses him. It's just perfect comedy. I mean, again, Harold Ramis, who was his co-star in Ghostbusters and did all that sort of stuff, and was there. It's just brilliant. There's not a bad moment in that film. And I also think I didn't actually realize until I saw that film that Groundhog Day was an actual thing. And then now you realize, oh, they actually do that, right? So it's kind of, it makes it even more kind of like,
Punxsutawney Phil, was an actual I don't know which concept. I think he's an actual groundhog.
I'm sure it's not the same one. I don't know how.
I'm sure there might have been a few.
Yeah, I don't know how long groundhogs live. I should probably find out. But it's just a movie full of classic moments, isn't it? I mean, there's just not, everything from when he takes the old boys in the car and zooms off, and like you say, he goes through those the 5 stages of I'm not getting out of here to
grief, really. Yeah, you're right. He does, like, he almost goes through the 5 stages of grief because like he doesn't realize he's trapped until he's effectively killed himself multiple times. But I think it's just such a stunning movie. Again, I'll probably watch it later.
That film has an excellent WWE or WWF tie to it because he gives 2 of the kids at the party some WrestleMania tickets.
He does. So there you go. See, he knows what people likes.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect segues. This is what I like, Damo. So while we're talking about that, so you've got to this point in your career now where you've made a name for yourself as the Beast of Belfast, and you've, like I said, people have gone on and whatever. Then comes the point when you get into the WWE or NXT and whatever, and they give you a name change to Killian Dane. So again, let's keep walking. So how did we get there to the name change of Killian Dane?
So one of the head writer, I think it was the head writer of NXT at the time, wanted to call me Valak Dane. It was a name he came up with. I think he was aiming for something Viking-esque or something.
Yeah.
And I had said, listen, my main problem with this is I'm actually Irish. So I think we should lean into that in some way. So he fair play to him. He gave me a little bit of leeway with that. So he said, right, go and come up with names. And I came up with about 60, right? But the very top of the list was Killian. my school that I went to when we moved out of Belfast when I was 14. We moved up to the countryside, and the school that I went to was renamed Killian, St. Killian's. He's the patron saint of the area that my parents now live in. And also, like, the name Killian just kept popping up. Kylian Mbappe is one of the best players in the world. Cillian Murphy was absolutely killing it. With whether it was Batman or whether it was the TV show Peaky Blinders. So that name just kind of kept hitting me. So I was like, shit, let's try. Put that in the list, and it was right at the top. So I was kind of hoping that they'd go for it. And they did. I was surprised they did because it says killing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, I was delighted because it was one of those things for me. To have an Irish name was important. But they had to keep the Dane part because they were kind of married to the Dane part.
Yeah.
So, that's the smile and wave part of joining WWE. You're a character in somebody else's story as opposed to your own. But I was able to get a little bit with the Killian part, and I was very happy with that because Killian's it was a really cool name, and it took me a while to get used to. But realistically, like I was Damien O'Connor originally, and I became Damo O'Connor, then I became Big Damo, and it was more because Damo was my nickname, and more by accident than design was I called Damo. So like I wasn't like crying too much about it. But on my first TV appearance, they called me fucking Damo on TV. So I was like, oh god. So it was one of the most bizarre things. But no, I eventually got used to it, and we made it work. But yeah, it was bizarre at first, definitely bizarre.
Yeah. So, but your NXT time must have a lot of good memories because you had. Well, you met the boys in Sanity, who again we'll come on to a little bit later. You met your now then wife, or your now wife.
Well, I didn't meet her. I'd known her for
well, no, I know, but she was part. She was part of the whole Sanity thing. You know what?
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to get at. It was all part of the the whole thing there. But for me, you actually featured in one of my favorite. It's in my top 3 favorite matches of all time still, which is that ladder match.
Right.
At Takeover New Orleans when you were in it with EC3 and Adam Cole, and that match was nuts. So purely for my own self-interest, talk me through that match. Because that match was a real moment for NXT as well, because that exploded several people's careers.
Absolutely. For me, I like that was probably one of my last matches before I went up to the main roster as well. So yeah, it was very cool. The dynamics leading up to that, they wanted to introduce a new belt, so they come up with the North American title idea. They needed to debut 2 wrestlers at the same time, which was EC3 and Ricochet. So there was a lot. Lars Sullivan had just really debuted as the future monster that So there was a lot, like, it wasn't the atypical lineup that you would choose for ladder match. You know what I mean? Like myself and Lars were, and even EC3, are unusual choices for ladder match. But I think that gave us, so many creative, cool ideas going into it because, yeah, we aren't the typical ladder match, participants. I mean, effectively, Velveteen Dream, was one who, you wouldn't be sure because he was more of a character-based wrestler, but he had all this athleticism. So what it was when we went to plan this thing, we had a decision between all of us. We're like, okay, let's throw out what we've seen in recent ladder matches. These nonsense slow climbs for no reason and stuff like that. Like, so we know Adam's winning. So how about this? We're going to run up the ladder, and if somebody doesn't stop us, we're going to win the belt. And that was our mindset. We all trusted each other. Yes, there was, when we're trying to put it all together, we've got to satisfy a lot of things. We've got 2 debuts, we've got 2 monsters. We've got Adam, coming through as the, he's going to be the victor. So how do we make that in a villainous way where possible? So like we had a lot of things on the line that we were trying to put together, but we got there and we were very surprised by the feedback after, because while we were very happy with the match, like, it just the feedback got like more and more and more and more positive as the days went on. Like it was actually mind blowing. The response we got. Because after matches sometimes you go, oh, that felt really good. Like I said this recently actually. I preferred the match I had in War Games. I felt more accomplished after that match than I did at the ladder match. But don't get me wrong, like I loved the ladder match. We had a lot of fun and everything else. But I think with War Games, it was I came back afterwards feeling, oh shit, we did something special there. But it wasn't until later that I felt that with the ladder match, So, but we were very lucky. We opened the WrestleMania weekend, so that maybe we had a bit of luck with the crowd. Maybe we had a little bit of friendly crowd interaction as well. But yes, no, it was a great experience. Everybody in the match put such a shift in. We all tried to stick to our initial goal, the psychology that we wanted. We wanted to make it look like everybody was trying to win. We tried to make it that everybody had a moment where it looked like they could win. We tried to have moments where all of us are there trying to get there at the same time. So, every box we tried to tick, we ended up ticking, and all the cool moves and all the cool sequences and things like that. So, the best part is the end of the match actually fucked up. There was a ladder breakage. Not a lot of people know this. There was a ladder break where Ricochet springboards onto Lars's back, and that was meant to lead to a very different finish of the entire match. But we used the ladder multiple times, so the ladder fucking broke, right? So the crazy thing is, the boys managed to on the fly come up with a fantastic finish that wasn't meant to be, So fair play to the lads. And again, this goes to the praise we ended up getting. A lot of that comes down to the boys who managed to make that finish still work, even though what originally was meant to happen, which we'd done in practice, we'd made sure that it worked. Lars is climbing. Ricochet springboards onto his back. Lars keeps climbing. It was insane. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
And it put everybody over. But the boys came up with something really quickly on their feet right at the end when the ladder broke, and they did a great job. And fair play to them, because it topped off what was effectively, a crazy match. And we still got to the point where Adam stole the victory, and that's what we wanted.
Yeah. No, I see. For me, that match had the same effect the first time that you saw HBK versus Razor Ramon back in the day when they first did that match. It was that similar effect. It was like, we're watching something special here with these ladders, because again, I think it was another benchmark, like TLC when the Hardy Boys and Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian did that match. That was another big ladder match. Well, this is what that felt like to me. At least.
Wow, that's very high praise.
It was.
Incredible matches.
I just remember. I can't tell you anything else about that pay-per-view, even though there were some big matches. I probably could remember if I thought about it. But that match had such an impression on me that the rest of the show was just like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. That I just seen something incredible. So yeah, no, I absolutely loved that match. So that was one of those big things. So when we finally met in real life, that was quite awe-inspiring for me. So but I'm not going to give you too much of an ego, Rob. But yeah, so Sanity then, because Sanity was birthed pretty much there. Well, you met Eric Young back in TNA, didn't you?
Yeah, we did a match together in London, in Wembley Stadium, I believe. And EY was a wonderful fella. I'd watched him 100 times. I was a big fan of the Super EY, and I loved the Don't Fire Eric story. Like I was a big fan of his work, even Team Canada back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So to finally meet him, and he's this absolute sweetheart. Very given. We had a 6-minute match, and we did everything we could think of, and he was just wanting to showcase me as much as possible. So he was a lovely fellow, great experience for me to do TV work with. And then I'd met Axel in Germany. I did a bunch of shows for WXW, GWF, and a couple of others, and I kept running into Axel, and he was a lovely fella. He actually gave me great advice leading up to my tryout for WWE, actually. So he just really a gentleman. So, and then I knew when Nikki, because she got signed 6 months before I did, and Axel had been so lovely to her when she met him. So I knew, when they got put it together in Saturday, I knew they'd be in good hands, because EY's an incredible leader, you know, all that TV experience, but also such a gentleman. And then like Axel, such a lovely man. The shame for it all really was that Sawyer Fulton got injured, because he was a cracking fella, 6'7", big dreadlocks, looked awesome, but he tore his pec, and that's why I ended up joining Sanity. You know, by like I was definitely not meant to be involved. I was meant to join the UK tournament, the very first one, so it would have been potentially a very different tournament altogether, if I'd have been in it. So yeah, it was because I was the only one who was employed by WWE. I wasn't. So a lot of the ones in it weren't employed, you know. So it might have been a very different a very different situation altogether. So yeah, it was so you know, being put in Sanity ended up, you know, being very bit bittersweet for me, because I loved Sawyer's a lovely fella. Madman Fulton he is now, and does a bit for TNA and AEW. And so it's bittersweet, like replacing him. But you get your opportunity to have the full production value of a WWE entrance. You know, the smoke, the music, the lighting. It was absolutely incredible, and you know, being able to be led by Eric Young, you know, who's just, he is a superstar. No matter where he is and what company he wrestles in, he is a superstar. He's a world champion. And it was amazing learning from him. And you know, Axel and I ended up becoming best friends. You know, so it was amazing. And then obviously my wife's pretty cool as well. You know, just
Yeah, we have
to give her some sort of
or else
credence. You
she'll
know,
be out of the job. Yeah,
we didn't actually used to like working together. So because we both had, like, you know, philosophical differences and stuff like that with wrestling, but you know, when with Sanity it was very different, because you know, when you're in WWE, it's like joining EastEnders, or it's like joining like a, you know, another soap or a movie, whatever, because you're no longer Damo, you're playing a character, you know, a specific role that they're looking for. And so, you know, we had a lot of fun working together, and kind of learning the system, so to speak, you know, and going through that process. But yeah, Saturday was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. They, you know, the truth is, like, WWE dropped the ball on that, because when we first debuted and we got to the point of our first ever match where it's all four of us, that was in Orlando, Takeover Orlando. The crowd just ate it up, man. And they turned us babyface. They were meant to turn, so the WWE wanted to turn AOP babyface, but the crowd were like, no, we want Sanity. So and that's what had to happen. So I believe a lot of that's down to Nikki and Axel's energy, because they brought something really special to the role. Like, they were absolutely nuts, running around like crazy people, literally. And then you know, the Christmas of EY, and you know, listen, it was a brilliant experience. And like, to be fully involved, and like to have, like, one of the things I really liked about it is they gave us a lot of freedom, to kind of, at first they wanted our promos to be really like word for word, but by the end of Sanity's run, in NXT, we wrote our own promos, you know, and it was very, for WWE to allow that is a testament to how we did, I guess, in the role, but also you know, to how much they trusted us, you know, and that was very cool. So yeah, it was a brilliant experience. And you know, that's the, you know, that's literally the dream possible start, you know, is to be surrounded by these incredible talented wrestlers, and to be given, like, you know, enough respect that you can start doing your own thing. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't like that at the start. At the start, there was a lot of teething errors. There was, you know, producers almost fighting with each other, trying to figure out how, they were all disagreeing with how Sanity should be presented, until Triple H was like, no, it's going to be like this. And then everybody fell in line.
It's quite handy having someone organized like him about, isn't it, really?
It's kind of important, you know, so it's good. And because he was such an approachable boss, like, we could ask him questions and stuff, and it was never an issue. So like, I think what, from that point onwards, you know, it was very easy. And that's why NXT got so big, and got so much fun to watch, because we had direct access to the guy whose vision it was. So we could all just go and do what we were good at, and that's put on good matches. You know what I mean? So that whole area, that whole period was just incredible for about 2 years.
Yeah. So you went up to the main card, and then you came back to NXT, and you worked with people like Drake Maverick, Spud,
Oh God,
who are
nightmare
aware of his indie roots, shall we say? But yeah, so you did a bit of everything really there, didn't you? You came back, and now, like you said, you think WWE dropped the ball slightly with Sanity. Progress Wrestling have picked it up.
Absolutely. Listen, like when we went to the main roster
back together.
Well, that's it. So on the main roster, the major issue there was taking Nikki out of Sanity was a disaster. But that's the philosophy of Vince McMahon versus Triple H, and he couldn't figure out where to put the woman when we were getting beat up, and it was just nobody was willing to challenge him on it, sadly. And Hunter was away negotiating between Fox and USA for the two deals that came up in 2018. So our timing just wasn't great, and it just sometimes goes that way. But for the three of us, it was an awkward start on the main roster. Our first day, we were meant to debut at the main event of SmackDown, and they ran out of time.
Oh,
so
whoops.
They had to cancel it. Then the next week, Shinsuke Nakamura got bit by a bomb dog in Los Angeles and could no longer make the show. That became a huge deal, actually. And then they needed somebody to fight Jeff Hardy. So somebody put their hand up in a meeting and said, "Oh, EY would be great," So we lose our first match right off the bat and blah, blah, blah. So, but yeah, as you say, WWE did drop the ball there, but Progress are going to pick it right back up again. And myself and Axel been teaming now for the best part of the last few months. We kind of teased teaming for a long time, and then eventually we're actually going to team now, and it's something that we're looking to maybe do as well. Maybe a little bit outside of Progress as well. Like we love teaming together. We have so much fun doing those matches, and the crowds are starting to really get behind us. That last show we had in the Electric Ballroom, the end of middle of October, there, 22nd of October. They were so much fun to perform for, and now we get to bring Eric into the mix. So our constant thorn in the side of Dominatus Regnum, or whatever the hell they want to call themselves. You put a fancy name on it.
I may have had a hand in that, but we'll
wow. So you're at fault for a dumb name. Good for you. But it's one of those things. It's like being able to bring Eric to the party. The Smoking Aces and the big man. But we're going to have a hell of the big man Bullet. We're going to have a hell of a 6-man tag. And I don't think people realize how much Eric's going to bring to the party. So it's probably going to get a bit nuts. It's probably going to get a bit nuts.
Yeah, but the Progress faithful in that Electric Ballroom do like nuts. And this is at Vengeance, which, depending on how fast I get this out, may or may not have happened. So, so you're fighting Spike Trevay, who is set to be a future guest on Desert Island Movies.
Sad for your fans.
A thorn in the side for everybody at Progress at the moment. That man is he's seemingly indestructible. He seems to break everybody else, but not himself.
Listen, pride comes before the fall, and his fall will come just like everybody else.
He's
doing really well right now, and I'm sure he's very arrogant and he's enjoying himself, but it will change.
Right then, so let's move on to your third movie choice. What have you got for us, Damo, in that list of 12?
This is incredibly tough, right? So I'd be remiss not to involve something from the Marvel universe, because I am a Marvel fan. I've had a bit of malaise over the last while coming out of Endgame, but Captain America 2: Winter Soldier is one of my favorite movies of all time. It was like a political thriller meets action meets science fiction, meets dark comedy. There was a bit of everything, and I absolutely adored it. Like Robert Redford playing this incredible villain. Like you almost don't. It's not that you don't see it coming. It's like you enjoy the journey. The whole thing about the anti-hero Winter Soldier is incredible as well, and Captain America not willing to let go of his friend. Like Steve Rogers goes through this journey where at first he is the ultimate, company guy, the ultimate blue eye, whatever, the all-American fella. And he goes through a hell of a story after Winter Soldier, because he realizes it's not black and white anymore. He's literally in the gray. And his journey after Winter Soldier is utterly brilliant as well. So I think the movie itself, the whole concept, the idea of eliminating threats before they happen, is something that we've almost dealt with in especially in America, you know, like with counterterrorism and everything else. So, you know, it has a lot of relevancy to parts of the world. You know, at multiple stages over the last couple of decades. But the movie itself it's a masterpiece, in my opinion. It's probably the one that made me realize Marvel was now serious. You know, I loved Avengers 1 as well. It was incredible, but I think I realized, you know, the Marvel universe could put on really good movies, not just really good comic book movies. And I think this was the beginning of that for me. And you know, a shout out to, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy and so many other movies that were all utterly fantastic. But for some reason, you know, Winter Soldier was just, and I wasn't a massive fan of the original Captain America movie. I thought it was okay.
Really, I loved the first Avenger.
It was okay, you know. But I felt two was just like it just ramped everything up for me. And like, you know, it set up so much going forward. And like, I think that was Anthony and Joe Russo did Captain America Winter Soldier 2. They ended up doing Infinity War and Endgame, and I can see why. They just absolutely nailed it. And it was just a wonderful experience, top to bottom. To be honest, it's another one I've watched multiple times. And I think like I started to really appreciate Chris Evans in Cap 2. Also, he's super jacked, fair play to him, you know what I mean? So it's hard not to enjoy a fella who does his bicep curls, you know.
Sharing a little bit of man love there.
That's it, always.
So have you always been a fan of comic books, or is it just the MCU movie type things that really grabbed you?
So, like, this is growing up in Northern Ireland. I didn't have great access to comic books. A lot of that's down to, you know, trying to get things imported from America and whatever else during the Troubles. So, like, I didn't really get a great opportunity with comics as a kid. I remember I collected Sonic the comic, which I think that might have been a British thing, but you know, I didn't see any comics until. Wow. I was well into my 20s, and a friend of mine put me on to The Boys comic, and that was the first comic I ever actually read. And then they ended up doing a TV show, which is fantastic. A big fan of the Boys comics. I ended up getting them all. But so I was a big fan of the cartoons, though I loved the X-Men cartoon, the Spider-Man cartoon, Fantastic Four, not so much the Hulk, but you know, a lot of the cartoons that were coming through at that point, and then on DC side, Batman and everything else. So because the cartoons were pretty good, I think that kind of set up my original love of the universe. And then one of the local arcades that I live near had the X-Men arcade, where there was a bunch of you could play like 6-man at the same time. It was like Streets of Rage, but with X-Men. It was incredible. So I think that kind of really like bolstered my love of the Marvel universe through that way, but through a very roundabout way. So when Iron Man came out, you know, I was like everybody else, you know, you're mixed with intrigue and everything, because I'd loved the Blade series that came out originally. Blade 2 is actually on my list here. Big fan of the Blade movies. But like I wasn't sure if it was something that was going to really take off. Even when the Iron Man movie, I was like, oh wow, you know, Downey Jr., this should be interesting, whatever else. But you know, I wasn't sure how good it was going to be, but it ended up being utterly fantastic. And you know, it all goes from there. Were there a lot of dips across the way? Of course. And the journey itself now is, you know, as I said, there's a bit of a malaise almost. There's just so much content. But I went to see the Marvels there 2 days ago, and I loved it. So I had a bit of malaise after the She-Hulk ending, and the Thor: Love and Thunder was fine, you know, and like a lot of the stuff was just okay as opposed to must see. Whereas at this point with Captain America 2, like that was must see movie. And I felt, you know, Marvel went through a run then after that was just shit. You couldn't miss it. Now don't get me wrong, like as I said about dips, like Avengers 2, Age of Ultron just didn't quite hit. But like after then, Infinity War, Endgame, and the Guardians and so much others that just really like I can see why it became, you know, such a powerhouse, you know what I mean? But a lot of that's down to the directors, the Russo brothers who did Cap 2. And I think without them, this maybe wouldn't have worked so well.
Yeah. No, there's yeah, the Marvel films are. I mean, for me, I was a huge Iron Man comic book fan growing up. So when they made the Iron Man movie, I was like, great, because originally back in what the 80s, 90s, they were talking about Tom Cruise in the role, which would have been interesting. And then Robert Downey Jr. took it on, and is a much of a likeness of Tony Stark as you're going to get from the comic books.
Well, if you think of his, the way in the comics, the way like Stark goes, into the alcoholism and everything else. So to have, a guy like Downey Jr. who had a hell of a life, play this character, you're like, they couldn't have been better casting in any way.
And the proof was in the pudding when the film came out. I mean, I was a little bit gutted because then everybody jumped on the Iron Man bandwagon, and before that, I was kind of like, "Yeah, I know about Iron Man. No one else."
Oh, gatekeeper over here, the gatekeeper.
Exactly. Yeah,
hey?
I'm an OG.
I was
I'm an OG Iron Man fan. Yeah.
I think I preferred when I was a kid with the cartoons. I preferred War Machine because he had a better costume.
Yeah. It's interesting actually. For all of the episodes of Desert Island movies I've done so far, no one has picked a Marvel movie. You're the first person to pick a Marvel movie. So it's interesting because I'm surprised nobody has before. But like
because
you say,
it's a 40 movie epic, so
yeah,
it's hard. It is hard to choose, and I do get that. But myself and my best friend, like we've got really similar tastes. He's the one who got me into wrestling and stuff like that, right? But he's the same as me. Like Captain America 2, it's just it's stuck up there. You know what I mean? Like I continually think about it, and that's nuts. You know what I mean? Like there's been 20 odd movies since. It shouldn't be stuck there, but it is. That's how good it was. It's a fantastic movie.
It's one of those films that I think a lot of people, I mean myself included, will do a run through at least once a year or once every other year. You go through the whole MCU and stuff. I mean, I tend to do things like I watch all the Godfathers every year. I watch all the Rocky movies. Now I've started watching.
Do you still watch the third one?
Huh?
You still watch the third Godfather?
Godfather, yeah.
Godfather 3?
Well, there's Godfather Coda now, which kind of tidies up Godfather 3 and makes it a little bit more palatable. I never disliked Godfather 3. It's a little bit dry.
I rewatched 3 this year and I realized, because I didn't hate it at all when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When I was younger, but rewatching it, and I never realized how bad Sophia is.
I was going to say, it's got its problem. She's a better director than she is actress.
She's one of the best directors alive, and that's what's so bizarre because she was such a poor actress. But I think the main issue with Godfather 3 is you've got one of the best lines in Godfather history. Just when I think I get out, they pull me back in. But that's the only real time you feel his acting chops are on it in that movie, because they go and they make him this back and forth with the Vatican and all, and you're like, this is it, the concept and is just way too. They go in the wrong direction, I think, with the whole thing. And whereas 1 and 2 were literally perfect movies.
Well, I think that was the problem with Godfather 3. It was onto a loser before it even started, because the first 2 was such incredible masterpieces. But the third one, I'd say, if you watch the Coda version of The Godfather, which is like slightly re-edited and they've changed the order very slightly in it, makes a little bit more sense. But I still think the bit of the opera at the end holds up. That actually it's not typically Godfather-esque, but it's the tension's there, and you don't realize till the last minute, oh no, the wrong person's been shot, kind of thing. So that was meant to be Winona Ryder originally, but
it would have been a very different movie actually, because she was an incredible actress. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to luck and everything else, but the magic of Godfather 1 and 2 was not recaptured. And listen, I get it. Like, I know a lot of people feel that way about Back to the Future 3 and stuff like that as well. Like, because but people don't like. I love it. I'm a big fan of 3. It actually came out at a time whenever I was more compos mentis when it came to movies and stuff. But like a lot of people, kind of look down on 3 because 2 was so good. But I think it's different with The Godfather.
I normally have people saying to me they like Back to the Future 3, but not 2. And then when you watch 2 after you've seen all 3. 2 is like the Empire Strikes Back of Back to the Future.
2's my favorite because it's the what if. You know what I mean? Like
so clever.
It's the I think a lot of time travel movies have been based on 2 ever since, because the concept of going back and fucking up is the best part. You make a mistake. I love it. I love 2. I think it's incredible. The whole idea of alternative realities is kind of off the back of 2. But anyway, but like with the Godfather and stuff like that, like I'm similar to you in that I like to rewatch movies a lot. Like I'll rewatch the Harry Potter movies, over Christmas and stuff like that, because it's the winter kind of thing to do.
Yeah.
I used to be like that with Lord of the Rings, but I just can't watch them anymore. They're
Too
too long. Even though they're
too
perfect
long.
movies, they're perfect movies, but I just can't be bothered sitting down for 3 hours.
Well, 4 if you do the director's cut version.
Which I did. I lived with a fella who was an even bigger Tolkien fan than me for through a couple of years, and we would genuinely sit and watch all 12 hours of footage. But oof. So I'm a big book fan. I read all the books to Lord of the Rings, to all the Harry Potter books, blah blah blah. So I'm a big reader, and like the movies are so, they've done such a brilliant job because they've left out a lot of stuff from the books that were unnecessary, which normally you're like, oh, I hate when they leave stuff out, but yeah, everything they left out made sense. So that's why it's a perfect movie.
Unlike the Hobbits, where they put in a bunch of unnecessary stuff, which
Stuff that didn't happen.
In the appendices. Yeah.
They mentioned the Battle of Five Armies, and they made a full movie of it. So okay.
Yeah, exactly. And Legolas is shoehorned in. So
well, he was alive at that point, but
yeah, but he was in an appendix.
He wasn't
literally in like 3 lines of an appendix, and they made an entire film around him in The Hobbit. That was that was a bit much for me. And then they took out the Battle of Bag End, which really upset me.
Yeah.
So it was that was an odd one. So so Lord of the Rings was cool. Yeah. So getting back to the Marvel ones, which is what we're on about. So I think I definitely think that they got the right set of actors in a perfect moment. It was like a perfect storm.
Yeah,
because you had Robert Downey Jr., you have Chris Evans, you have Scarlett Johansson, you have all of these really, really cool actors in it. And I think that's what held it together. And I think that's where they're struggling with the new ones, is they're trying to turn, and I don't want to say unknowns because that's a little bit harsh on some of them. Like, Shang-Chi is not a Marvel character anybody's really heard of. Everybody's heard of Spider-Man. Yeah. Everybody's heard of Captain America. And I think that's where the struggle is. Like the Eternals. Nobody had heard of the Eternals. I think they were going for a real kind of, see if we can do a Guardians of the Galaxy thing. Where, people didn't really know who the Guardians were, but it was such a cool movie that everybody loved it. And I think that's the problem with the newer movies. I think the newer characters they're bringing in aren't sticking, which is why they've now announced things like Blade and Fantastic Four and some of the more classics. And obviously because they've now got the Fox side of stuff in, and the X-Men coming in at the end of Marvel's. Oh, spoiler.
Yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler. But no, I think you're right in insofar as like the awkwardness of having the perfect cast, and then Chadwick Boseman dying is I think that was massive, and it was tough to try and deal with because Black Panther was an incredible movie. And it was so far reaching for having a black lead, a black director, and almost an all black cast. Like it's everything that you needed, you know what I mean, from the entire setup, from the movie, from the future. And then Chadwick died, and I think that was a major loss. One, as a great actor, but two, because that's an important character going forward. And like I think we've had some difficulties since then. Robert Downey Jr. Retiring as Iron Man. Chris Evans retiring as Captain America. It's like, yes, you're now trying to make a bigger deal of Ant-Man. Who was not a big character in any publications. Hank Pym was a bigger character than Scott Lang. But listen, he's charming, and I really enjoy Paul Rudd's work and stuff like that. So you're trying to replace effectively Robert Downey Jr. and others. So it's very difficult. But as I said, I really enjoyed the Marvels. I thought it was a lot of fun. Ms. Marvel has been a breath of fresh air for the MCU. I think she's just so encouraging about almost everything she does. Her family, like Nikki, it reminds Nikki and I of our own families. You know what I mean? Like just the way her mother is and everything else. And I love that. It really brings the human aspect in to the inhuman part of the universe. But like yes, the whole Fox thing, bringing like the multiverse of madness, the whole concept of the multiverse. Now we've got Kelsey Grammer playing you know, a little spoiler there, you know, so, you know, these are like the ways forward. The whole controversy surrounding Jonathan Majors, it's now put a full dampener in what they were going to do next. The low-key TV show was outstanding. The second season, I love the first season. It was one of the best things I've seen in the MCU, but the second one was brilliant. They did a hell of a job there. But yeah, it's difficult because who's going to step in the roles of all these amazing actors? Spider-Man movies have worked great, but if Tom Holland left tomorrow, fuck, that'd be awkward. You know what I mean? Because then that's another major character gone. So you know you've lost Black Panther. In real life, we've lost Robert Downey Jr. and Captain America. Sorry, we lost Iron Man and Captain America in the you know, in the MCU. So it's difficult to figure out what the next step is, and I think that's maybe where the malaises came from.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot riding on Fantastic Four. If I'm honest, I think
I'm disgusted that John Krasinski isn't the one they're going with.
I don't know.
I'm really
I
pissed
keep
off.
I keep flitting because you know
I love Pedro Pascal, but I felt Krasinski was Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, almost perfectly cast. Yeah,
perfect.
I kind of had a bit of a leaning for Matt Smith because there was talk of him for a little while, and
I think Matt Smith's got a villain written all over him. You know what I mean?
He
did.
Like that's he did Morbius, didn't he? And he was the villain.
But Morbius was a weird movie, but I could see Matt Smith like as at any point being like I could see him as Doctor Doom or something. You know what I mean? Like he's just one of those fellas. I think he's got the real weird, you know, that the weird shape of his face. Like you almost can.
Hi, Matt Smith.
No, but it's hard to believe everybody says he's the biggest sweetheart on earth, right? But I could, if you told me he was the biggest cunt alive, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that. You know what I mean? Like I can see it. You know.
So be it, like I said, I think there's a lot riding on Fantastic Four because again, that's the next big one that everybody's heard of, pretty much outside of the X-Men, and there's going to be this. I don't know how to describe it really. This cluster of Secret Wars on the way, which supposedly everybody is in. Which will be interesting to see how they
bring people back and stuff. It'll be very interesting. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they pull that off. But I've stopped trying to second guess Kevin Feige. He seems to know what he's doing. So
the only thing I second guessed him on was the ending of She-Hulk. I thought was a disgrace.
Well, I thought it was going to go one way and it went the other. I was like,
if she can never be in peril, then what's the fucking point? I hated it. You know, Deadpool when he breaks the fourth wall. Is funny, but you always feel he's in peril. You never feel he's ever out of peril. Whereas with She-Hulk, it was like, okay, she can never be in peril now, and I killed a really good show for me because it was going really well up until that point. Final episode was the worst thing the Marvel have ever done.
Oh, I don't know. I think most people would say Secret Invasion is the worst thing they've ever done.
It wasn't great, but it was like it didn't disgust me. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
It just wasn't good.
Yeah.
Know?
Oh, well, there we go.
And I love Talos. I thought the actor who plays Talos is fucking brilliant. Yeah. But they just went in a weird direction, a very weird direction.
Yeah. No, it was definitely wasn't what I was expecting. So, but yeah. Anyway, so moving back into wrestling land. So now, as we previously mentioned, your next big match, depending on when this comes out, is Vengeance. I could ask you if you're at Progress Unboxing in a movie, but I can't because we don't know who's turning up. So
I'll make myself available and we'll see what happens.
We might get phone calls. So aside from Progress, which obviously we know you're in because I've talked about it quite a lot. So what else are you doing, you know, wrestling wise, and you know, what else are you up to at the moment?
So for the rest of the year, I'll also be available at OTT, who largely do shows in Ireland and a little bit in England as well. Over the Top Wrestling, based out of Dublin. I'll be doing a couple of shows for them at the start of December. I'm in Enniskillen, which is in Fermanagh, Northern Ireland. And then I'll be doing Dublin and Belfast in the middle of December. So just before Christmas, I think it's the 16th and 17th in Belfast. And there might be one more. I'm still waiting to find out. There might be a third date as well. But OTT's been a lot of fun. It's an incredibly talented roster. Young LJ Cleary kind of came through with that group. He's now over there with Noah. So you know, it gives you an idea. There's a bit of talent, especially young talent, which is very annoying but and again in a very positive way.
Don't put them over.
So for anybody listening from Ireland, yeah, there's a bunch of shows before the end of the year, and we'll be doing our very best to try and hit as much of Ireland next year as well with OTT. It's been a lot of fun so far. Really, I had a lot of fun. We did 4 dates there at the end of October. We were in Wolverhampton, Dublin, Belfast, and then Wexford. And I hadn't been in Wexford since I was a child, so it was a lot of fun for me. And I got to wrestle a mix of lads, so I'm very excited for the future of OTT. And I think it's something I'd love if OTT and Progress can come together at some point. Would be very cool.
Yeah. So what's it like when you come home to OTT when you're in Belfast? Because obviously you must be, I would suggest, on the main event most evenings when you're on the show. But what's it like walking back out through to your home crowd? Because obviously, as we said earlier, you're based pretty much in Orlando, Florida these days. So it's not like you just stroll across the road and there you are. You have to jump on a plane and get home. So what's
Absolutely.
it like? I mean, do the family
it's great. It's great because I can get
out, do friends and stuff.
Absolutely. I think they all got mad at me because I didn't win the belt on one of the one show, so they kind of huffed at me a bit for a couple of months. But no, it's been brilliant. We been able to see like friends who I went to school with, bringing their kids to shows. Seeing lads who I went to uni with and stuff like that from Northern Ireland would come to shows, and it's been brilliant. Like I've had so much fun. But like more importantly for me, it's so this is coming off the back of COVID and everything else. So really seeing the country open up again, trying to get thousands of people back in the door, and that's what we managed to do in Dublin. We get like 2,000 people. In Belfast, we've had like a couple of really big runs where we've managed to get like close to 1,000 people into the Europa Hotel there in Belfast. I think our best was about 750, maybe 800, which was incredible. Like, and I'm a bunch of comedians who I follow on Instagram from Northern Ireland would then then hit me up saying, "Hi, we're at the show," and I'm like, "Oh, brilliant!" I've been watching these guys, doing comedy, and they're coming to see us wrestle. So it's been very cool. And then getting to take a very short trip to my sister's after the show, and hanging out with her, and go up and see my mum and dad the next day. So yeah, it's been brilliant. I love getting back as much as possible. One of the best parts about my entire journey is I've got the freedom now that I can kind of choose what I do next.
Yeah.
And I do my very best to get home as much as I can. Because one of the things that we kind of lost over COVID is we couldn't get home for 2 years.
Yeah.
First of all, because of the pandemic, and second of all, because we were waiting on our green card. So we were kind of landlocked here in the States. But now that I've got my green card, I can come in and out as I please. And that's been the thing I've done the most, pretty much. I get in and out pretty much every 2 weeks.
So are there any shows you want to work on now? I mean, because you've worked on a lot. I mean, you've been all over the world. You've done, you've done New Japan, you've done AEW even briefly, you've done obviously WWE, a large part of your career and stuff. And there are some wrestlers who say they enjoy the indie life because it's like you say, you can pick and choose your events. Is there anywhere you want to go or want to go back to, or?
So my only goal that I haven't ticked off yet is I haven't wrestled in Japan. I've wrestled for New Japan in America, and I've wrestled about 30 Japanese stars now, but I have never wrestled in Japan itself. I've wrestled Japanese lads in every other country that I've been in.
Maybe you should tap a few of them up
never
and say,
actually...
"Can I come over to you?"
Yeah, exactly. So that is a goal that I really do want to tick off, and it's something that I came very close. Right before I signed at the WWE, I was literally mid-negotiation to go to Japan for the first time. And I obviously they probably caught wind of that more than anything. And they hastened, my signing process. But for me, that would be something I'd love to take off before the end of my career. If not, I'll go there when I'm a lot older and done with wrestling. I'll go there as a normal holiday maker. But I would love to do that. I think that would be very cool. I got to travel to Australia years ago as well as effectively a backpacker. So I'd like to maybe go there and wrestle. That'd be very cool. But I'm open to anything. One of the cool things with Progress is we got to wrestle in the Middle East. Got to wrestle in Dubai last year. And you know, stuff like that was you know, life changing. I never thought in my life I'd be going to Dubai for a wrestling show. So you know, stuff like that was awesome. I'd open for pretty much any weird and wonderful concept. You know, that was for me, that was a new continent to be in, let alone to wrestling. So yeah, that was very cool. And honestly, like, with the indie life, as you say, you know, I get to pick and choose my entire existence. When I'm older, when everything's done, I'll probably move into coaching. And that's something that I'm quite passionate about anyway. But over the next few years, while my body still holds up, you know, I'm still more than happy to travel. I love traveling. I've kind of nailed it, got it nailed to a T at this point, you know. So I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's something I've just got really into. Even though I'm quite a hefty chap, I've figured it out, and I enjoy doing it. So that's I'm going to keep, as long as I enjoy it, I'll keep doing it. That's kind of the best way to look at it.
Yeah. So right, your music choice. Here we go.
Oof.
So final choice. We need your music choice. I'm just trying to think, when I've been around you, when we've been in a locker room at a wrestling show, I'm trying to think of the music you have on, and I can't think of anything. So this is going to be interesting. So what are we going with?
So I've got a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to music, and I thought about this pretty hard because I was tempted by the Departed soundtrack. Ooh. Because there's quite a mix in there. Like, you've got, you know, Van Morrison with Pink Floyd, you know, playing Comfortably Numb on the Berlin Wall is one of the songs they play there, and it's utterly brilliant. You got Rolling Stones, and you got a couple others. So there's a couple of brilliant tracks, but I think the best soundtrack of all time, and this was tough, right? This was very tough. Yeah. For me, is The Matrix. Because the mix between the likes of The Prodigy and Rage Against the Machine and even Massive Attack, playing when and I'm a big Massive Attack fan. I saw them live a bunch of times here when I'm in the UK. You know, the bit where Neo's talks to Morpheus for the first time on the computer screen. He's literally listen to Massive Attack, and it's very fucking cool for me. I listen to Massive Attack when I'm looking for downtime and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so like, listen, even, you know, the links to wrestling with Rob Zombie and stuff like that in the Matrix soundtrack, like Dracula is playing as they're walking through the club and stuff. And then you've got like Marilyn Manson and Rammstein and everything else. So even Deftones, and like all the bands I was really into in the early 2000s. One of my favorite bands is Rage Against the Machine. That's been the one I never got to see live, just the way it's worked out, which sucks. Whereas I've seen Deftones, you know, I've seen The Prodigy and blah blah blah. So it's been very cool that, like, I've the more I go back to watch because the Matrix, I easily could have put that in this list of movies, because I've seen it a million times. I watched it when I was 16 years old, and it's been stuck in my brain. It's just another one of those iconic movies. Bullet Time was the first time anybody had ever done a 360 concept behind filming, whereas now they can do that, you know, so easily with drone footage and everything else. You know, they literally set up cameras 360 degrees around Keanu Reeves as he does the fallback, which was, you know, the Wachowski sisters, you know, did an amazing job back then. It was next level filmmaking, you know what I mean? But yeah, honestly, the Matrix, a brilliant movie, but the soundtrack is another level. Finishes off, final song of the entire movie is "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, and you know, how do you beat that? Like, how? That's literally the most perfect song, you know. So, but yeah, it's up there. But listen, there's, you know, I was thinking about, you know, like the things that I've loved, you know, whether it was like I'm a big zombie movie guy. Yeah. And I love 28 Days Later, and I feel like 28 Days Later had one of the most perfect soundtracks. Also the original Resident Evil movie, with had almost perfect music, you know, the Slipknot version of My Plague and all that stuff. And, you know, there's just so many great soundtracks, you know, out there. But I'll go with The Matrix. You know, I'll stop talking in a circle here. So.
Right, so you're happy with choices. So we got Mike Bassett, England manager.
Yep.
We have Groundhog Day. We have Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and then we have the Matrix soundtrack. So you're locked in for those on
Locked
the
in. Locked in.
Locked in. So there we go. There are Big Damo's choices, and they are some rather spectacular choices, I have to say. I do enjoy those. I think I would, I'd definitely go for a couple of those possibly. So all it leaves me to say is thank you very much, Damo, for coming on to the island and letting us know your 3 choices. Make sure if you're in Ireland, England, that you check out where Damo is wrestling next, and make sure you get along to a show, because you haven't seen Damo wrestle till you've seen Damo wrestle live. If you're in London, get down to a Progress show when he's on, because the crowd are mental. Damo's mental usually in the ring. I genuinely feel sorry for some of his opponents. I have seen him firsthand smash somebody with a chair, and just no, stop it. That hurt me from the other side of the room. So
has to be done sometimes. Has to be done.
Yeah, it does have to be done, especially if it's right. Anyway, so all it leaves me to say is thank you very much, Damo, and we will see you on the next episode of Desert Island Movies very soon. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.